I never imagined my quiet life as a part-time farmer and researcher would erupt into such a dramatic clash with the Suburban Homeowners Association. Yet that's precisely what unfolded during my second summer at Willow Creek Estates. On the surface, Willow Creek was your typical suburban neighborhood: tidy houses in muted tones, pristine lawns, and an HOA obsessed with regulating mailbox styles and approved shades for window shutters. I should have heeded the faint unease I felt when the realtor described the HOA as strict but reasonable. The reasonable part, I soon learned, was questionable at best. The real trouble centered on a 30-acre parcel of farmland I owned, leased to the Department of Agriculture for an experimental crop rotation program. I'd inherited the land from my grandfather, who'd tended it low-volumely for decades. Since my research job kept me traveling, I arranged a formal lease with the USDA. They used the land for conservation studies, sustainable farming pilots, and test crops: think pest-resistant soybeans or drought-tolerant wheat. It was a perfect setup. The land stayed productive, the government advanced VY-TAO research, and I earned modest lease payments to offset property taxes. But then came the HOA's new VYC president, Cynthia Warwick, known to some neighbors as Carol, in hushed, exasperated tones. A forceful woman in her mid-50s with a knack for confrontation, Cynthia had a VY shine of suburban perfection that left no room for farmland. Her campaign against my property escalated from petty complaints and fines to an audacious move, erecting an electric fence around my land, supposedly to bar my access. When the USDA got wind of her scheme, the fallout was seismic, leading to legal battles that brought Cynthia and the HOA to their knees. This is the story of how one woman's quest for control nearly derailed critical federal research and how justice ultimately prevailed. My grandfather bought the farmland nearly 60 years ago, back when the area was just open fields and a modest farmhouse where he and my grandmother lived. Over time, the surrounding land urbanized, but our family held onto the farm even as developers carved out Willow Creek Estates nearby. By the time I inherited it, the subd VY Shoun's cookie-cutter homes had sprouted up, their backyards abutting my fields. I moved into the old farmhouse, which stood at the edge of the 30-acre plot, split neatly by a small creek. The USDA's lease allowed them to plant experimental crops and conduct studies, with their marked trucks occasionally rolling through to collect soil samples, install sensors, or monitor irrigation at night. Some Willow Creek residents found the farmland charming, a rustic contrast to their manicured lawns. Others, especially the HOA's vocal minority, grumbled from the start. "Why do those government trucks keep driving by?" they'd ask. "Is that tractor going to run past 6 p.m.? Or that fields and ice rights dragging down our home values?" The complaints were mostly minor until Cynthia took charge and my world turned upside down. I met Cynthia Warwick 3 months after returning from a research trip. I was on my porch, coffee in hand, when a tall woman strode up my driveway, clutching a clipboard like a weapon. "I'm Cynthia Warwick, VYC president of the Willow Creek HOA," she declared, her tone as rigid as her posture. I stood to greet her, but she ignored my outstretched hand. "I'm here about these so-called agricultural active VY ties on your land," she said, VYing a paper at me. It was a copy of the HOA bylaws highlighting rules against commercial land use. "My records suggest your farmland might be in violation." I scanned the document, puzzled. "Ma'am, this farmland predates your subd VY shine by decades. It's not a business, it's leased to the Department of Agriculture for federal research. I'm not running a farm stand here." Cynthia's eyes narrowed. "We have no proof of that. If you're profiting, it could still count as commercial. And frankly, those tractors and wires in your fields are disrupting our community's aesthetic." Trying to stay calm, I replied, "I can share the lease details, but the farmland was never part of Willow Creek's covenants. Your HOA governs the housing lots, not my property." She sniffed. "We'll see. If this land ties to your residence, it might fall under our rules. I'll be in touch." With that, she marched off, VYing me uneasy. Over the next few weeks, Cynthia unleashed a barrage of complaints. Noise from USDA tractors, alleged fertilizer odors, unsightly irrigation lines. Each letter threatened fines unless I complied with HOA rules that didn't apply. I responded politely, citing the farmland's separate deed and county records showing it was outside their jurisdiction. Local officials backed me up. These subd VY Shoun's planners had never included my land in their covenants. But Cynthia was relentless, escalating to accusations of environmental violations. She claimed she saw chemical runoff in the creek, prompting a state inspection that found nothing wrong. The USDA's practices were, in fact, a model of sustainability, but the scrutiny slowed their work, frustrating their team. Behind closed doors, Cynthia rallied HOA board members, warning that my farmland threatened property values. Some neighbors bought into her fears, worried about pesticides or vague boundary disputes. Others told me privately, just ignore her, she thrives on drama. Ignoring Cynthia proved impossible as her attacks grew bolder. The breaking point came one Saturday morning when I woke to a surreal sight. Metal fence posts driven into the ground along the boundary between my farmland and Willow Creek. Nearby, workers in neon vests were unrolling spools of wire. Stunned, I approached a young worker. "What's going on here?" "Morning," he said. "We're installing an electric fence for the HOA. Work order says it's to secure the farmland boundary, something about liability." "Liability?" I snapped. "This is my land. The HOA can't fence it off. Where's your supervisor?" The site manager showed me a check with the HOA's letterhead, insisting they were just following orders. I called Cynthia, who answered smugly. "Yes, I authorized it. We voted to protect our community. Your farmland's open access is a risk, someone could wander in, or kids could get hurt." "You can't build a fence on my property without permission," I said, furious. "That's your opinion," she replied coolly. "The boundary's unclear, and we're ensuring your active HOA ties don't spill into our neighborhood." I raced to the county recorder's office with my deeds, where a clerk confirmed the farmland was unambiguously mine. Appalled, she helped me file an emergency injunction, but legal processes were slow. By afternoon, the workers had nearly finished. The fence-a humming electrified barrier blocked the main gate the USDA used to enter from Willow Creek's paved road. New signs warned of shocks. I was forced to redirect USDA trucks to a longer, muddy back route that was barely passable for heavy equipment. Cynthia emailed the neighborhood, claiming the fence would protect our children and preserve property values. She even threatened me with trespassing charges if I touched it. 3 days later, USDA scientists arrived for routine soil sampling, only to find the gate locked and the fence live. Dr. Sarah Lynn, a researcher, called me, confused. "Did you install a security system? We can't get in, the fence is electrified." "No," I sighed. "That's the HOA's doing. I'm fighting it legally." The team had to detour 5 miles to the back entrance, slogging through mud that delayed their work by hours. The fence also risked disrupting a wildlife corridor the USDA studied along the creek, as shocked animals could skew migration data. Worse, Cynthia had chosen a high-voltage cattle fence, far stronger than needed, raising safety concerns. I pushed for the injunction, and a county planner, Mr. Dawson, offered to mediate. At a tense community center meeting, he presented maps proving the farmland was mine. Cynthia countered with a dubious survey from a private contractor, claiming the boundary was vague. Dawson dismissed it, saying, "This doesn't match county records." Cynthia snapped, "Then we'll get another survey. The fence stays, our safety comes first." I interjected, "You're blocking a federally leased site, Ms. Warwick. That's not just my problem, it's the USDA's." She shrugged. "They can go around. We won't have their trucks ruining our streets." The meeting ended in a stalemate, with legal removal potentially weeks away. Then the USDA filed a formal complaint with state and federal authorities, accusing the HOA and Cynthia of obstructing their research. They documented delays, costs, and safety hazards from the fence, demanding its removal or an access corridor. The complaint rattled the HOA. Lawsuits against a federal agency could bankrupt them. Residents began questioning Cynthia's leadership, though she doubled down, emailing the community, "We won't bow to federal bullying. The USDA can get a permit from us." The fence caused more chaos when neighbors noticed it was wired to the community's power grid via a sketchy junction box. After rain, it short-circuited, scorching grass and sparking fears among families. Parents demanded to know if it met safety codes, but Cynthia brushed them off, blaming faulty wiring while keeping the fence live. The crisis peaked when USDA trucks arrived with heavy equipment for soil analysis, only to find the gate guarded by security hired by Cynthia. The guards demanded an HOA pass, which the USDA's lead engineer, Marjorie Holt, dismissed. "This is federal property, you don't need your permission." After a heated standoff, police intervened, ordering the guards to stand down. The delay made local news, Willow Creek HOA locks out feds in fence feud. Cynthia called the police overzealous, but residents were mortified. At the next HOA meeting, the board confronted Cynthia. "You didn't tell us about the high-voltage fence," one member said. "We voted for a boundary, not a hazard." Another added the USDA's complaint could cost us thousands. Cynthia deflected, insisting the farmland was the real threat. When the board voted to deactivate the fence, she tried to veto it, claiming authority in the absent president's stead. The meeting dissolved into chaos, with residents fearing financial ruin. "I filed a lawsuit for trespassing and damages, backed by surveys, photos, and USDA statements. My attorney Robert Klein sought an injunction to remove the fence while the USDA's federal complaint loomed larger." Cynthia kept fighting, posting "no trespassing" signs and flyers accusing me of endangering kids with chemical experiments. She stoked fears of GMOs, ignoring the USDA's fact sheet about their safe, sustainable crops. In court, Klein presented ironclad evidence, my deed, county maps, the USDA lease, and photos of the fence's encroachment. Cynthia's lawyer argued the boundary was unclear, but the USDA's counsel was blunt. "This fence obstructs federal research and active interference." Judge Harlan Tate questioned Cynthia directly. "Did you build on land you didn't control?" "Your Honor," she replied, "our community's safety comes first. That farmland's a nuisance." Tate frowned. "You have no proof of harm and the plaintiff has clear title. Why an electric fence?" "We had to act," she said, unyielding. Tate issued an injunction to deactivate and partially remove the fence, citing likely trespass. Cynthia raged, emailing neighbors about a biased judge, but the board complied, dismantling sections within days. Still, Cynthia didn't quit. "I caught her flying drones over the farmland, filming USDA equipment." When confronted, she claimed she was exposing suspicious activity. "I reported her to the sheriff, and the USDA protested the surveillance, leading to a warning to stop or face charges." The Department of Justice launched an investigation, uncovering emails where Cynthia boasted about blocking the USDA to force them out. Facing potential indictment, she grew desperate, trespassing onto the farmland to film sensors, accusing the USDA of hiding secrets. A technician caught her tampering with a locked container, and a federal officer detained her for trespassing and interference. Her arrest stunned Willow Creek. The HOA ousted Cynthia, apologizing publicly and vowing reform. She faced federal charges: trespassing, obstruction, illegal fencing, plus my CIVYL suit for damages. At trial, evidence buried her emails, videos, surveys, and her defiance of court orders. Judge Tate called her actions reckless, sentencing her to 8 months in jail, probation, and hefty restitution. Legal fees and judgments forced her to lose her home to foreclosure, and she left Willow Creek in disgrace. The farmland flourished again, with USDA trucks rolling freely and wildlife roaming unhindered. Willow Creek's home stayed neat, but the HOA adopted checks to prevent future overreach. The saga lingers as a warning. Cynthia's attempt to fence out progress trapped only herself, proving that harmony between farmland and suburbia hinges on respecting boundaries, literal and figurative.